My name is Dan Dorval, and I'm President and CEO of Dorval and Cherney Financial Advisors. I am an independent certified financial planner and author of my book, Financial Success for the Rest of Us, Reality-Based Financial Planning for Mainstream America.
Hi, my name is Leah Woodley. I'm an associate financial advisor with Dorval and Cherney Financial Advisors. Our conversations discuss what it means to do quality of life planning in all areas of your life. So, Dan, I heard you were taking a course on LinkedIn and it provided some insight that was valuable to what we do. Why don't you share about that?
So one of the things that we see all the time, and anybody out there that has like teenage kids, especially if you've got teenage girls, if you talk to them for more than about 5 minutes, you're going to hear them bring up that they have anxiety. And I hear my kids talk about that all the time. I've got a 22-year-old and a 19-year-old, and they mention having anxiety all the time. So one of the things that this course was talking about on LinkedIn was describing how, through evolution, we created this old part of our brain that had, fear as a primary motivator. And fear kept us alive back when we were in, prehistoric type times. And that fear allowed us to take a very quick action. It usually was, fight, flight, or freeze. And so our brains got very good at making quick reactionary decisions in order to have us survive. Well, then as life got a little bit easier and humans started to develop a newer part of their brain through evolution, where we started to think about planning. Because originally we just kind of tried to get through the day and survive. And then as life got easier, we started to think about the future. And so that was a more complex processing for our brain to do. Now, the issue was that our brains still had both of these different functions. And what this course described was anxiety is really just adding fear to planning. And what I took away from that was financial planning, when combined with fear, creates financial anxiety. And we see this every day with the people we help. So if you take an example from this week where we met with a couple of different people on the same morning, both in their 60s, both planning to retire, both married couples, they happen to both be in very good shape as it relates to retirement. Now, they acted very differently when they came to us. The one couple already had a financial advisor, and they came in and they had this really strong, like confrontational, antagonistic type of perspective with each other
Mm.
as they were talking to us. And the reason why is the nurse that we were helping under our agreement, she had already retired. And she looked at life as being something that, they should live, they should enjoy. It really resonated with our quality of life planning approach, where you take productive actions that are in alignment with your values, priorities, and motivations. And that's exactly what she did. Now, her husband, on the other hand, he was the one that really resonated more with the other advisor, where they did a lot of projections. They made certain assumptions. He liked to look at spreadsheets. And so what happens in our human brain is we were never evolved to be presented with almost unlimited information. And yet in today's world, that's exactly what we have. We refer to it as noise. And our world is a very noisy place because we can go online, we can go on social media, there's friends, family, there's coworkers, and all these people are just bombarding us with all of this information. And so what he was doing is he was overwhelming his brain basically with inputs that created all these like, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? He was adding fear to planning. And a lot of advisors, what we experience is people will come in and they say, I have anxiety when I go see my advisor, and I have anxiety when I leave my advisor. They don't end up alleviating that anxiety. And the reason why is a lot of financial advisors are really salespeople. And if I'm going to sell you something, what I want to do is not focus on like a logical decision-making process. What I want to do is I want to incite emotions, very strong emotions. One of our strongest emotions is this idea of fear and anxiety. So if I can create a fear and then say, well, I'm the answer to your fear, they can get people to buy stuff. And that's how this advisor relationship had occurred. They said they would go see the advisor would sell them something. And then the next time they came to see them, the advisor would sell them something. And they had this endless cycle of fear, anxiety. That was kind of part of planning. So it really created this like paralysis by analysis type of
Mm-hmm.
perspective, and they couldn't move forward, or at least he couldn't move forward. She could, he could not. So it created this natural friction point in their relationship. So as I talk to them, first off, I always want to understand why they came to us rather than their advisor.
Right.
But what happened was it almost turns into like a therapy session where we really start to try to understand those values and motivations and goals so that we can take all these different puzzle pieces and align them into the picture that they're trying to create. Now, we make almost no assumptions about that.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is control what you can control, which leads to productive actions. So we're cutting through all of that noise and focusing on them as specific people. And what happened was when they came in, they said they couldn't trust the projections. But when I showed them that they were, easily able to accomplish their goals and showed them the logistics of how we would do that, then I asked, do you trust that that would work? And because now they're controlling what they could control, he said yes.
Mm.
So they came together with this idea. Now they're just focused on what do we actually want to do with our lives rather than, what's going to happen with an election or what's going to happen with the US dollar. Is Social Security going to go broke? And all the things that are out there that we should be afraid of, which the media also exacerbates. And so they were stuck. And after they met with us, what happens a lot is people will describe it back to us as peace of mind.
Mm-hmm.
They have a sense of relief. And what that is they're alleviating their anxiety. Doesn't mean we're taking it away. It means that they're reducing their anxiety and they feel better for at least a period of time until the noise gets them all crazy
Right.
and does that to them again.
Mm-hmm.
So then to compare and contrast that, the other nurse who came to see us, also in great shape for retirement, and we had showed her that, she came in to start to implement. She actually chose to retire earlier than she expected because she wanted to spend time with her grandchildren. She wanted to make sure she maintained her health. She was starting to see her mental health kind of go down because of her work. And so she focused on controlling what she could control. And when she came in, our focus was on actions, not projections. So we were showing her, okay, here's your pension. Here's how much we're going to generate from your retirement investments. And basically, we were going to recreate the income streams that she's always been used to through working.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in her case, no questions, no spreadsheets, no assumptions, none of that type of stuff. Super short meeting. She just allows us to do what we're going to do because she trusts in what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that might open her up to people that maybe aren't trustworthy, and that could create an issue. But what happens is she has virtually no anxiety about the future. She just knows that she's going to be okay.
Yeah.
That is really this compare and contrast of what we do through quality of life planning is we really help people reduce, hopefully even eliminate that anxiety so that now they can make these big life decisions instead of being paralyzed into inaction and just kind of continuing with status quo. they can start to say, oh, I can see the possibility
Mhm.
of being able to retire, what that looks like for me, not for anybody else, for me, and then they can move forward.
That is, wow, that is such a great illustration of the two dynamics. I think what you said about finding out what the client's values are was so important because at the end of the day, that should be the focus, their values, their priorities, their motivations, and the goals. If they are clear on that, then we can help to put everything else together for them. We can help to offer them another perspective. We can help to provide those action steps to get them to where they need to be. I think when that is not the focus, then you get into the feeling of needing to do more or have more, and it overcomplicates things. I think it's very important to just simplify things by getting to the core of what you want, um, and just focus on that. So,
So I think too that one of the issues with this is it naturally leads to what I refer to as like the casual dishonesty of the world that we live in. And what I mean
mhm,
by that is like marketing, for example.
mhm,
Advisors who are very good at marketing, they use these emotions, this like natural overwhelmed feeling that many of us have every day, and they use that in order to manipulate what you do so that they can sell stuff.
yes,
Our world of being kind of overwhelmed and having anxiety actually leads to marketing, especially dishonest marketing,
mhm,
leads to that being very, very effective.
mhm,
So, the way around that is, how do you actually have the trust in somebody? Because, of course, nobody ever comes out and says, hey, you shouldn't trust me. Like,
right.
I'm completely dishonest. I'm just selling you crap that you don't need.
Mhm,
Nobody ever does that. So, how do you know that? And that's why
mhm,
we rely so much on our group advisory agreements, which are inherently fiduciary level agreements. Why
yeah,
we rely on word of mouth, why we have, 67 five-star Google reviews and all of these things is because our agreements are inherently fiduciary in the nature that we're being paid by the entity that sponsors the agreement rather than the individual we're helping.
mhm,
So we have a vested interest in helping them alleviate that anxiety that they're experiencing and improve their quality of life. If we don't, they would go back to the entity that's sponsoring the agreement and say, well, this isn't a good thing.
right.
And we would lose the whole agreement, which is our entire way of doing business.
Mhm,
Where a typical advisor would just look for the next person and sell them something, and then look for the next person and sell them something. They don't care if they lose clients along the way, or even if their reputation might not be that great. They rely on marketing to find
mhm,
the next people. So
yeah.
it's a fundamental difference in how we approach the business as advisors.
Absolutely. I've taken some sales courses where they're like, prey on the pain points, and people are taught to do that, but we don't have that conflict of interest. We don't have to sell products or anything. We can truly focus on what the client wants to accomplish and provide the action steps to get them there. So that is very, very important. So, for those who are feeling stressed out, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, and this really is applicable to almost every aspect of life, to be honest. Whether
Mhm.
you're traveling, I mean, think about travel.
Yeah.
Think about imagining all the things that could go wrong. Is my flight going to be late and then I'm going to miss my connection? And then what do I do with my hotel? And, all the things that could happen. And of course, then we also have the ability, even if we're just deciding on where we're going to go eat,
Mhm.
I could read endless reviews. I have
Mhm.
endless information. Where in the old days, I might have just asked the concierge at the hotel, and the concierge would say, oh, well, there's a couple great places just down the road. I'd have limited information. I'd make a decision, move forward, and be fine with it.
Yeah.
So I would argue that you always want this kind of relentless focus on your personal quality of life, what actually matters to you. so that if I'm traveling, if I'm going to go to this place, I don't really care if a whole bunch of people had a bad experience on something I'm not going to do.
Right.
I'm going to focus on the things that matter the most to me. And if
Yes.
I do that from that quality of life perspective, it allows us to get a little bit better at making decisions in
Hmm.
almost all aspects of our life. Because in a lot of cases, for example, like this idea of being cheap, you'll hear people say somebody's like being cheap.
Yeah.
But if you really consider quality of life in your actions, what you usually look for is value.
Yes.
So I might pay a lot for something if I really value that thing and I really
Absolutely.
want quality, but something else where I don't particularly value it, well, why would I pay a lot of money for higher quality if it's just not something that's important to me? So quality of life should really be at the center of how you approach most of life's major decisions, and certainly something in financial planning as complicated as retirement.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think another thing to highlight is that sometimes less is more. So we don't always have to strive for more, more, more. Sometimes less is more. Um, and especially with decision making, sometimes the less options you have, the more effective your decision is. So I think that is important to highlight as well. Well, this was a great conversation. I hope that this encourages someone to focus on what your values are, what brings you quality of life, and not be focused on the noise around you and overwhelming yourself with too much information. So,
If
any
you're
parting
actually
thoughts?
experiencing more anxiety because you talk to your advisor or more anxiety because of somebody that's helping you, that's not a good thing. That's a red
No.
flag, like instantly. So you want to be
Yes.
careful of that. And that's true if you're on TikTok, YouTube. If you're watching videos and you walk away more anxious rather than less anxious, you should really question whether or not that's a good source of information.
Absolutely. You should leave with peace and clarity of mind. That is our goal for our clients. So, well, thank you, Dan, for sharing this topic with us. This was great information. And I look forward to talking to you next time.
All right, thanks, Leah.
Thank you.